Let's get going. Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Cunningham. I'm the Associate Vice President for Alumni Relations here at Lehigh. And I'm hosting this webinar with Sarah Bombard, who is also an alum from the class of 2006 and a graduate degree in 2008. She's the Senior Associate Director of Admissions. And we're really lucky to have her because she's doing a lot. Had a really successful year this year with record admissions. First time we had more women apply than men. So she'll talk a little bit about that. And she'll do that for 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll open it up to your questions. The way you're going to ask the questions, the easiest we found with a group this big, is that you type your questions into the chat, and then I will read those aloud to Sarah. I'll also condense and combine some questions because I imagine a lot of you will have similar questions. And I do have to say we are recording this. If you need to drop off early or want to share this with your friends afterwards, you can do that. We'll send a link to that. So Sarah, why don't you tell us about Lehigh admissions?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm very grateful to have been asked to come and brag a little bit about the wonderful year that we've had. I am a Lehigh alum. I have worked in the admissions office since I was a student. I started as a tour guide. I then moved on to interviewing students as an admissions fellow, and I fell into the admissions profession, and here I am several years later. You can do the math. But we had a really incredible year this year, and I'm so proud of the work that we've done. I'm excited to be able to talk to you a little bit about it, and I'm excited to hear your questions. I'm a very visual person, so I have some slides also to keep myself on track. When I heard I only got to talk for 15 minutes, I thought, uh-oh, this is going to be bad. And I see some familiar names in the attendees, so you all know I'm going to try to condense a lot into just a little bit of time. So to get started, again, a visual person, this is what our past few years have looked like. It's a record year for us. We had 18,415 applications for an incoming class of 1,500 seats. It's a huge amount of growth in just 1 year. From last year to this year, we saw a 21.4% increase in the number of applications we've received. To give you a little bit of a sense of what that means for us, we are an office of 16 folks like me, admissions counselors who work with students. There's a VP and a director. We are assisted by a really amazing team in our financial aid office who works with any applicant to Lehigh who is also applying for financial aid or who has questions about financial aid, which is many of them. We also have an enrollment support center, which helps us with our processing of all the documents. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But all of the different pieces and files and uploads that students send along. And we have some support staff in our office as well who are responsible for answering the questions of these 18,000 students and their parents and their counselors and everything else. So for us to see that amount of growth in 1 year was really incredible. We saw growth in pretty much every single area that there is that can be measured. We saw an increase in both our local territory, which we consider New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. We saw an increase in not, kind of outside of that area. We saw an increase in students who are attending high school not in the United States, students of color, students who are the first person in their family to go to college. Every college that we have, so arts and sciences, health, business, engineering, the IBE program, IDEAS program, CSB program, all received more applications this year than last year. As Jennifer said, and as you probably read in the teaser email, this is the first year in Lehigh's history since 1865 that we have had more women apply than men. And in the national landscape, more women are applying to college generally. So this is actually exciting for us because we finally caught up with that. But it was exciting for us to see that Lehigh has now attracted, pretty much equal numbers of men and women. Our early decision pool also increased. And this year we could have just about filled our incoming class with early decision applicants. We don't. That's intentional. We do not want to do that. And we won't do that. I don't think in the future, unless it's really mind-blowingly strong. But we want our, students to come from both regular decision and early decision. But all those pools, every single pool that we had, early decision 1, 2, and regular decision, all increased. So how did that happen? It was a lot of hard work, I'll tell you what. And this is where I can be so proud of my team and my colleagues and all the folks that helped us get there. But there wasn't a silver bullet. It wasn't like, hey, maybe we should send some emails out. We send hundreds of emails a year. A couple of things that I'll point out that we tried to do pretty intentionally over these past few years that we're really starting to see kind of come to fruition are that we're taking a really humanistic approach with our marketing, with our communications with students, with our visitors that come to campus, with students that engage with us. The applying to college process is really hard. And I'm imagining that some of you remember your own process. I imagine that some of you in the audience are parents of students who are planning to participate in the college admissions process soon, if not already doing so. And it's stressful and it's hard. And there's all these articles about, single digit acceptance rates and applications going up every year and all of these things. And so we really try to approach our process and communicate with our students in an open way, and we encourage their questions, and we want them to learn about Lehigh. And if that means that leads to them applying, great. And if it means that leads to them understanding that we are not a great place for them, then we wish them well. We also try to increase our visibility generally. There's a few ways, kind of lower in the slide that explain that, but we attended conferences as a staff. We presented. We reached out to different types of people that we maybe hadn't been doing as much outreach to. A notable difference is that we did increase the number of merit scholarships that we awarded. We looked at our financial aid and where our peers are, and about 5 years ago we were offering about 5% of admitted students would have some sort of merit scholarship, and now we're past 20%. I think this year it's a little closer to 30%. Of students who receive merit scholarship. We know cost is a huge factor. We also launched a new scholarship, the Soaring Together Scholarship Program, which is in celebration of Lehigh being coeducational for 50 years, a celebration of Lehigh women. This is our first application where students applied to it. Otherwise, we just select our top students, but students could actually raise their hand for this one, and their applications were incredible. We received over 1,300 applications for about 12 or 15 spaces that we had for that scholarship. We did a little bit more engagement through social media. That's where our students are. So yes, they occasionally check their email, but they also are on social media. And so we had both fun and informational posts on Instagram. We have a TikTok. If you don't follow us on TikTok, I recommend it. We had a pretty good one that we posted yesterday. And we encourage them to engage with us there, right? They're already on Instagram, they're already on TikTok. Send us your questions there. We're happy to answer them. We tried to have a broader influence with parents and counselors, and we started talking to students earlier. So we didn't just begin the conversation when they were juniors. We began the conversation in 9th grade, and we encouraged students to start learning about us as they were learning about colleges generally. We expanded our virtual and on-campus visit options, and for a long time, Lehigh didn't have virtual options. One of the silver linings of the pandemic is that we built out an incredibly robust virtual and on-campus visit program, and we see students taking advantage of that from all across the world. We extended our test optional policy, and so students can choose whether or not to include their test scores. We looked at our use of fee waivers and how we could maybe expand that or bring that to the attention of students who may not have realized that we could have waived their fee. We communicated with seniors a little bit more deeply. So we started earlier, and then we really ramped up the communication because we found that students in their senior year were still deciding. They were still thinking of places that they were going to apply. And we partnered with some really cool vendors. If you had a student admitted to Lehigh, or if you saw some of our social media, you may have seen we had a really cool pop-up hawk. So when they opened their acceptance letter, the hawk popped up. That didn't necessarily lead to more applications this year, but we're hoping that making Lehigh an exciting place to be, even if it's just as soon as you open your package, you get a little fun surprise, that might help us next year. To give you a sense of kind of who is in the pool, the numbers on the left, so those are the applicant pool. You can see it was pretty evenly split, so it wasn't, a huge swing toward women applying, but we have now broken that 50%, kind of even mark. We had applicants from just about every state, U.S. territory, 134 countries. And in our incoming class, as of last night when I was doing this, we have 1,539 students. So on a target of 1,500, we're incredibly pleased. The little asterisk is that we finalize all of this information on the 10th day of class. So they have to actually move in and sit in the classrooms for them to count as our incoming class. But as of today, we're expecting 1,539, just about evenly split with that gender. This may be the first year that more women enroll at Lehigh than men, but that, again, we'll stay tuned. That remains to be seen. We'll have students joining us from 42 states, DC, Puerto Rico, 34 countries. About 7% of our students are non-citizens, and about 35% of students identify themselves as students of color in the domestic pool. So non-citizens are kind of pulled out in a separate way. And then you can see the breakdown here of where they fall academically. So engineering, business, our intercollegiate programs are our in IBE, integrated business and engineering, computer science and business, or the ideas program. And so this is kind of where we are this year, and we hope that all of these students join us in the fall and they, sit there for all first 10 days of class, and this is our final, these are our final stats. But how do we narrow it down? Like, how do we get from that 18 to 1,000, 1,500? And it's a lot. We look at everything. So at Lehigh, we use a holistic review. We look at everything that a student sends us. If it's a part of the application formally, we're going to consider it. If they send it to us, not tangentially, but like additionally as a supplement, an extra resume or an extra letter of recommendation, we're going to consider it. We look at their transcript. We look at the quality of their application, right? Do they capitalize their own name? Do they capitalize their streets? Do they write things in grammatically appropriate ways? What do they write about? What do they choose to talk about, and what do they choose to leave out? What is the topic of their essay? Are there quality issues? Is it well written? What do they involve themselves with? Do they have a job? Do they have clubs or organizations that they're passionate about? Are they consistent with those? Did they start new things? Do they have leadership roles? Have they won awards, or do they have honors? Is there any disciplinary information? We have students who come to us and they, say, I got caught vaping in the bathroom, and that does not mean that they're not going to be admitted to Lehigh. We will absolutely still consider them, but we will consider that. Students can provide additional information. Maybe that's how COVID affected them. Maybe it's disclosing learning differences. Maybe it's just they include poetry that they've written that they, wanted to have us see and read. We look at how they applied. So did they apply early decision or regular decision? We look at their senior year performance. So we get their transcript from 9th through 11th grade, and then we ask for mid-year grades, and we say, how are you doing this year? We want to make sure that their performance stays really strong. We look at the ratings and the narrative that the teacher provides. We require a teacher recommendation. The ratings and narrative that their counselor provides to get a sense of who they are in the school community and how they've approached their college search process. We read other recommendations. Have they engaged or had contact with Lehigh? We have a lot of virtual opportunities. We send a lot of emails. Do they engage with us? Have they asked questions? Are they on our radar, or is the first time we've ever heard of this student that they applied? We ask Lehigh specific questions. We ask them what they want to study here specifically. We ask them about our programs like Lehigh Launch, or have they had a family member who attended Lehigh? And then if they want us to consider their testing, we will also consider their testing. And what are we trying to get from all of that? We're trying to get a sense of whether or not they're academically prepared. We will not admit a student who we do not feel can do the work. It's a baseline. We are not going to admit a student that we feel that we are setting up for failure. We look at their personal qualities and what they're going to bring. We are not a school where students simply exist in a classroom. They are friends. They are members of a community. They live in residential halls. They join different organizations and clubs, and they go abroad, and they are three-dimensional humans. The best part of my job is that I get to bring all these really cool three-dimensional human beings that are still very much works in progress and plonk them all in Bethlehem and see what happens. And usually they absolutely thrive and they have great experiences and they meet one another and they make connections and it's fantastic. And the whole point of holistic admissions is that we want people to come from different perspectives, right? We want people to come from all 50 states and with different academic interests and having different conversations at different lunch or dinner tables. We want to see what they want to accomplish when they're here. We want to talk to them about, well, what are your goals? You want to be a nurse. Okay, Lehigh is, we could be a place for you. We may not be the best place for you. What do you want to accomplish in your life? And how can we help you get there? And then we want to know that they've considered Lehigh. We are a medium-sized school, and we want to know how they will impact us, how they will push Lehigh to be a better place, how they will help us grow. And we want to know that we will be able to support them in that growth. And then down at the bottom, there's the little cloud of institutional priorities, which means that all of this is kind of in the context of Lehigh has goals and objectives. We have a certain number of beds. We have a certain number of seats. We could, in theory, bring in 100% of our students into the College of Business. That would be very bad, and the College of Business would be very, very upset with us. We could bring in an entire class of students from New Jersey. But that isn't what we want. We want students from all over. And so our institutional priorities are a way that we as a staff kind of level set for the year. We talk about what our office's goals are, what Lehigh's goals are, and then how we can use this process to meet them. Which brings us to the Supreme Court and possible changes to our goals or how we achieve those goals. So just to lead off, I will give you a few caveats. I do not have a law degree. I am not the person. You do not get to send, well, I mean, you're welcome to send me angry emails, but I'm not the person who makes the decisions. It's very much a community decision with a lot of people coming at it from a lot of perspectives. We are going to take this opportunity to evaluate what our options and opportunities are. And, this is a short webinar. I'm probably already over time, but to really get into this, it would take hours. And so, if you want to go out and buy me a beverage and we can go and we can have a cocktail, we can talk about it for hours, but here we're just going to keep it short and sweet. And I work at Lehigh. I've only ever worked at Lehigh. I can't talk to you about Harvard. I can't talk to you about UNC. I can't talk to you about what other colleges are going to be doing. So all that being said, what happened? Well, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that we are no longer allowed to use the kind of the checkbox, the indication of a student's race or ethnicity as a part of our holistic review in and of itself. They stated that Harvard and UNC failed to kind of demonstrate a compelling interest. This has a relationship to, what their mission statement, what their goals are, what they think that, they are hoping to accomplish in their admissions process. The court stated that UNC and Harvard used racial status in a negative way and that it enforced stereotypes. The court described it as a zero sum, right? So if they were advantaging some students, then they were therefore disadvantaging other students. And they believe that that was solely based or too heavily based on racial status. And that UNC and Harvard's processes that used racial status lacked a logical endpoint. And so there's been a lot of, historical casework that has been done, a lot of litigation about the use of race in admissions and the admissions process. And, it's still ongoing. And so the court kind of ruled that they didn't see an end in sight, and that was problematic. I encourage you, if you have not, and you are interested in this topic, read the decision. Don't necessarily read the opinion pieces and the viewpoints until you've read the decision yourself. But it's pretty accessible even for folks who are not lawyers. One thing I did want to point out is this direct quote: "Nothing prohibits universities from considering an applicant's discussion of how race affected their life, so long as that discussion is concretely tied to a quality of character or unique ability that they can contribute to the university." So that's important, is that, it is not that, if a student mentions their race or ethnicity somewhere in the application, or they allude to it, or they, discuss it, that we have to say, oh, no, we can't read it. We are absolutely able to consider that in the context of what that has done for the student, what has then been different for them in their experience, what skills they've learned, etc. What didn't happen? So there's a lot of, oh my gosh, this means all these different things. Hold on, slow down. It doesn't. It pertains specifically to selection of students. And it also pertains to colleges that use rolling admissions and, kind of looking at the numbers and trying to make decisions based on commitments that they've already received. They did not mention recruitment. It does not necessarily apply to how we seek out students to begin conversations with. It does not relate to scholarships or financial aid. It does not relate directly to whether or not we can collect the information so that we can report on it, after the fact. They don't mention employment. There's a lot of conversation about, what does this mean for employment? Well, this specifically doesn't say anything about employment. Will it lead to things? Perhaps. We are, as universities, permitted to set our own missions. They can be whatever we want. And colleges cannot consider racial status, but we can consider things that have been impacted by a student's racial status. So they describe these specific things: skills, knowledge, character. One of our favorite phrases in our office is, through discrimination, inspiration, or otherwise, how a student's life has been different or changed or unique or just, kind of personally theirs. And what will Lehigh do? Well, President Helbley made a very nice statement in the kind of hours or very shortly after the ruling came out, and that we have a core commitment to recruiting, attracting, and fostering and supporting a diverse and inclusive community, and that hasn't changed. And so many of us on the campus, I know especially in our office, I'll speak for our office, we're really pleased to see that. We're proud of the work that we do. I am an alum, and I know that Lehigh is a different place now than it was when I attended. I imagine many of you, it is even more different, but we're excited to see the change in Lehigh in all different ways, all the different students that we attract and retain and support now versus where we were, even 10 years ago. We are going to take an opportunity to evaluate our practices. We're going to be innovative. We're going to look at what our goals are and how we can make progress toward them. We have diversity, inclusion, and equity goals. We have a strategic plan for that. And I know that there will be folks having conversations about how this may impact those goals, how we can measure them, what they might be, and how we can continue to make progress toward them. We will continue with our holistic review. I gave you a lot of things that we look at. We're going to keep looking at all of those things. We're going to look at what state the student's from. We're going to look at what they write their essay about. We're going to look at what they're passionate about, what they love to do. We're going to allow students to speak to their own experiences. So in our Lehigh questions, we ask them, why Lehigh? Doesn't exactly say that, but we want to know why they're interested in Lehigh. And then we're also going to give them an opportunity to answer this question pretty directly. So we have not launched our application yet. It will launch on August 1st. If you're curious, you can see our prompts. We use both the Coalition and the Common application, and you can see them there. But we're going to give students an opportunity to talk about this, either directly or indirectly, or talk about something completely different if they don't want to mention anything related to that. We're going to look at our travel and recruitment practices. We're going to ensure that we are speaking to students of all different backgrounds. Students are in all different places, citizens, non-citizens, every different dynamic that you can think of. And we're, of course, going to continue to have conversations with school counselors and community organizations and figure out what questions they're hearing, how we can support them, whether or not their students all apply to Lehigh. I mean, probably not all of them will, but what can we do as an institution of higher education that will help students understand this, help parents understand this, help counselors understand our process so that it's a little bit more transparent. And that's all I have prepared. So I'm looking forward to your questions and yeah.
Yeah, lots of questions, as you can imagine. Many of you already answered about the supplemental essays and the Supreme Court. One question, sort of, I guess, related to Supreme Court that people are asking is about legacy admissions.
Mm-hmm.
And what Lehigh's policy is on that now. Will it change? You've seen some statements from, I think Wellesley was the most recent. Others have come out with statements that they're no longer considering legacy. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm betting there's some folks in the room who
have
an interest in this. So the way that we consider legacy is that we know that there are a lot of people who had really wonderful Lehigh experiences, and they love to talk about it. And they will talk about it to anybody and everybody, their own kids, their nieces, their nephews, their grandkids. And gosh, if they still apply after you've been talking about it for their whole darn life, then wow, kudos to them. It's kind of a glib answer, but we believe that legacy applicants have had a longer opportunity to learn about us. They've known about Lehigh for a longer time. We ask students, do they have family members who work at Lehigh? Do they have family members who attended Lehigh? We also allow students who, we allow them to share if they've interacted with an alum. So if it's a neighbor or, a teacher or somebody of that sort. And there is no direct, kind of like, oh, well, you're a legacy, so congratulations, you're in. It is one of the factors, right? All those different things, the transcript and the grades, and I'm a Libra, if anybody cares, but think of those scales, right? And so there's certain things that are going to tip, and then there's certain things that are going to tip. And so simply by you being a legacy, it does not outweigh any one or other thing, but it is a factor that we look at. If you want to know, the biggest impact that you can make on an application is early decision. Our acceptance rate is highest for any early decision applicant, regardless of legacy or any kind of personal background or their academic interest, what have you. Early decision 1, early decision 2, those are the highest acceptance rates. Those are the biggest benefits that we give. But the legacy piece is a piece just as how many AP classes you take, just as what you write your essay about, just as what extracurricular activities you're involved in, what your letter of recommendation says. All of those things. So do we have a plan to do away with legacy admissions? We do not have a plan to do away with legacy admissions. Is it going to be discussed? Absolutely. Our plan is, our goals and our processes are discussed every year. What do we keep considering? What do we not keep considering? Like testing. Do we continue to be test optional? Do we bring testing back? Do we go test blind? Do we stay test optional? All of those conversations happen freshly every year.
Okay. What is the percentage of legacies? Do you know the average?
Off the top of my head, I think it's about 17% of students in the class have some sort of Lehigh family connection. And that
not
could
necessarily grandparent, parent, but family.
Sibling. And that's actually really exciting for us, right? When you have an older sibling that has attended Lehigh and you see them and you hear those direct experiences, right? Your parents, they're old. The Lehigh of today is not the Lehigh that my kids will, Lord willing, attend. But, the siblings, it's like you're only a few years apart. And so that's, something that we look at is you're getting a pretty realistic look at what Lehigh's like. You're hearing that firsthand from somebody that you were sharing a very similar background to, and you're still thinking of Lehigh as a good place for you. Fantastic, right? That's education that you've been able to get, that you've been lucky to be able to receive that other students don't, but you're kind of going into it with your eyes wide open.
Yeah. James asked a question early on when you were talking about applications from students of color. Any idea how we got a 29% increase?
Great question. Outreach, conversations, doing a lot with engaging our alumni, and encouraging them to go out and speak with people, evaluating the high schools that we visit and the programs that we attend, all of those things, right? There's no one silver bullet thing that made any one area shoot up, or that we can directly tie, which is both good and bad. The bad is that, gosh, if it were just one thing, how easy. But the good is that it means that we are building a sustainable way to, kind of have this application base and this extremely talented application pool. It's not just building up a lot from the bottom. A few years back, a bunch of colleges made the application process really easy, right? Like, oh, just send us your name and your transcript and, that's it. And their applications went up, but, the pool changed. And we didn't do that. We built it really kind of authentically.
Yeah. Bill Glazer has a question going back to the test optional that you mentioned. How do the academic deans feel about the test optional? Are they sort of a voting block that they consider the test to be important indications of the future, or are they agnostic about it?
I don't know that. I'm not privy to those conversations, though I don't know that any of them have access to a student's testing information.
Ah,
So I don't know that they would know if a student submitted tests or didn't. But that's
okay.
a great question.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, we
fortunately
can ask them.
definitive answer.
So in terms of the overall numbers that you've mentioned, how do those compare to some of our peer institutions? Um, and further, sort of a second question about the engineering. You mentioned the balance of women. Is engineering getting better with the balance of women as well? Because I know traditionally that's sort of been the one place that lacks a little bit is engineering. So talk a little bit about our peer institutions and the trend in engineering.
Sure. So, I do like to brag. But we had a greater application increase in this one year than really any of our peers that we have looked at. So we've got a little network that we're a part of, and it's a variety of colleges, Northeastern and Emory and Villanova, and there are others, Patriot League and non. And we were seeing a greater increase than they did. So that's exciting. But again, we are proud of the work that we did to lead to that, right? We didn't just simply say, oh, it's free, or you don't have to write an essay, or you just check a box and we'll automatically consider you. These students are applying and they're going through the whole process because they really learned something about us and they want to be here. Regarding engineering, we also have we have a very strong percentage of women in engineering. So we have about a third of our engineers are women, which is amongst our peers and amongst just kind of the general percentage of women that pursue engineering nationwide pretty strong. We of course pay attention to that. We pay attention to men in the liberal arts. We pay attention to all of that kind of demographic information, because we want to have classrooms that are representative of the world, maybe a little bit aspirational, but we don't want to be in a situation where there's one person with a certain identity in a type of classroom, right? And I know that our IDEAS program, so our integrated degree in engineering and arts and sciences, is more than 50% women, which is incredible for an engineering program. It's very unique, and I don't think any of our peers have a program like that they can talk about.
Yeah, that's great. This is an interesting question from Glenn, talking about how some universities have sort of made quantum leaps in their academic reputations over the past couple decades, become the hot schools, if you will. So like Colgate, he mentions as one that is up and coming like that. What additional steps can we do for Lehigh to become considered a hot school by prospective students? Besides your TikTok account, which again is fabulous.
I think that's all we need, Jennifer. No, what a great question. I feel like this is such a wonderful plant question, because one of the things we talked about this year is how do we demonstrate that Lehigh is this school with momentum, right? Like, just having a low acceptance rate does not mean that a school is any better than any other school. It simply means that they have a low acceptance rate. But we have a lot of incredibly unique and interesting and dynamic programs and faculty and staff and students and supports here. How do we package that all up? So if you aren't aware, Lehigh has a new strategic plan. We just launched, and we're going to be doing a lot of work in getting that messaging out to our students and what that means for them. Talk to a 17-year-old, hey, Lehigh has a new strategic plan. They do not care. That does not particularly affect me. We want to make sure that they understand how it affects them and what it means, and how we are going to kind of position ourselves as a leader, and how we are going to be able to support students in their future careers, even if those careers don't exist yet, even if it doesn't exist yet at Lehigh, how they can help us move it forward. So yeah, I mean, we are also taking suggestions. So if anybody has any ideas, I would love to know.
Yeah.
And I actually just got a little bit of information from a helpful elf. But 38% women in our engineering incoming class this year versus 28% women in engineering in last year's incoming class. About
Yeah.
a 33 is like overall at Lehigh, but this class is 38%.
Fantastic. Well, and Joe Helby did a lot of work at Dartmouth on that front when he was dean of their
Absolutely.
engineering. So I'm sure there's a lot of learning that's happening there. Um, there's been a couple of questions about artificial intelligence.
Yeah, yeah,
Tell us
absolutely.
about that and how it's affecting, you're still going to have a job, right?
Well, I mean, if I can just have artificial intelligence do my job, I'm not going to say anything about it. No. Yeah, there's a lot of dialogue about, well, what happens when students use AI? So we did a little fun experiment. I'm a part of a summer program. It doesn't matter, but a bunch of colleagues from the college admissions side and the high school counseling side get together, and we did a little experiment. And it's really easy to pick out essays that are written by AI because they don't sound like they're written by a 17-year-old. I can also tell you that I'm sure we have had essays already submitted. I'm sure we've had why Lehigh's already submitted that have been, written by or helped with AI. I'm trying not to get too much into my opinion, right? But what I will say is that using AI in your admissions or the process or in your application as a student is like any other kind of academic dishonesty or cheating. One is that you're telling us that this is your own work, this is your own, kind of process that you have come to, and everything that you do is uniquely yours. And also, if you don't get the result that you want and you had AI do it, how much angrier are you going to be than if you had just done it? Right? Because if you, oh, well, I had my AI write all my, why college supplements, and you don't get into these colleges and you think like, oh, geez, would it have been better if I had done it myself? We know our audience. We are working with 17, 18, thereabouts-ish human beings. They are not perfect. We love that they're not perfect. We want them to be their authentic selves. I would way rather read a distinctly human, you know, anything
Mhm.
than an AI generated, technically perfect, grammatically exceptional response. And also, usually there's a giveaway like it doesn't align with your grade in English, right?
Mhm.
You're spouting out this Dickensian beautiful thing, and then your grade is like a B minus in college prep English. Doesn't usually align
Yeah.
with
Well, and I'll put in a plug too for the alumni volunteers for admissions that it'd be hard for a kid to, have a Zoom or a face-to-face interaction. That's where the alumni can
Absolutely.
say, yes, this person is very well spoken or, cares about grammar or whatever, or no,
Yeah.
that AI written thing that you're getting the human face-to-face.
And what's so interesting is like we are the only people who see everything. So the counselors submit their letter and the teacher submits their letter and the student usually does not get to see the letter. It's a letter of recommendation. It is generally confidential. And we get to see their essay and their transcript and all of it together. So when things don't add up,
Mm.
sometimes the student's like, yeah, I really pulled a fast one. They're not going to have any idea. And then it's like, oh, but your counselor's talking about how you struggle in English or how you're writing your essay about one thing and it's not listed on your extracurriculars. It's like, well,
Yeah,
that's strange. You didn't talk about, this thing in your extracurriculars. So we get to see the whole thing, and it's so fun.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
know it sounds weird to talk about your job being fun, but it really is. And, we see this whole thing. So, to farm that out, and I'll say this, to pay somebody to do it for you, to find an essay on the internet, not AI aside, there's ways that you can have
Yeah. It's
other
been
people
going
do
on
work.
for decades. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's not worth it.
Yeah. David has a little bit of a different question. When talking to prospective students and the topic of cost, tuition, room and board, how does
Mhm.
Lehigh compare with our peers? And what do you say to them, to people who ask that question, and why do they go up so much more than the inflation rate?
Sure. So college is an investment. And there's, data and articles and research that you all are welcome to look into about, is it worth it to go to college? And the answer is yes. We are not the cheapest college in the country, and we are not the most expensive college in the country. Amongst our peers, we're pretty aligned. We are lucky to be in a place like Bethlehem where students are able to live and the cost of living is reasonable. Our room and board is far less than some of our peers. It is higher than other peers that we would consider. Um, that being said, it is expensive, right? And families make sacrifices, and so we evaluated our merit scholarships, as I mentioned earlier on. We have a wonderful team in our financial aid office that work with families, and they talk to them about, well, what if you retire in the time your student's at college? What about multiple students in college? What about medical expenses, businesses, all of the different real life questions that families have that are not easily determinable by one formula. And so we try to make Lehigh as affordable for as many families as possible. Our intention is to, give them the aid that they need in order to be able to enroll at Lehigh and to take on some financial commitment. We're not going to say that Lehigh is free for everybody. We're not going to say that you will graduate with no loans, but we want our students to come in eyes wide open, choosing, to enroll at Lehigh with a financial commitment that they, as a family, feel comfortable with, that we, feel comfortable with as an institution. And hopefully they leave, they get careers, they get jobs, they, are successful, they pay those back. We have a very low default rate, and they continue to pay it forward. And, as alumni, we would love for you to help our students in that process, right? Help us in our process by talking about Lehigh, get the word out. How can we get Lehigh out there as a place to be? Help us talk about it. Do it. Join the alumni volunteers for admission and talk with students there. Hire Lehigh students. Make sure that our career placement rates are high. That's one of the things that we can hang our hat on, is that our students get jobs. We have one of the highest average starting salaries in the country for any college in the country, ahead of lots of those Ivies and those, single digit admit rate places. But it's because of our support and folks like you.
And we can send out and the links, the first destination report from the Career Services Department. And also Joe Helbley talks a lot about the Georgetown benchmarking report. We'll send a link to
10,
that.
20, 30, and 40 years after graduation, we are extremely strong in earnings, not just your first year, but 40 years.
40 years out. Yeah. So one question about that gets to the yield rate. So Glenn has sort of a double question here about not considering not charging an application fee to increase the number of people who apply, but then also the yield rate and how we increase our yield rate, and explain what yield rate is to those who may not know what that is.
Absolutely. So yield is the number of students who take us up on our offer. We make a number of offers, and then students are back in the driver's seat. Everybody's like, oh, admissions is controlled by colleges. 2/3 of the process is in the hands of the students. We cannot control who applies, and we do things to influence that. Could we remove an application fee? Absolutely, we could. What will we gain from it? Well, we'll get more applications, but our yield, right, may absolutely decline. It may be the same. We don't know. We may consider something like that. We're not going to consider it this year, but we have a yield that we are always looking to increase. And so there are factors that when rubber meets the road, students are considering, okay, here are my real options. I've applied to these colleges, but this is where I've gotten in. And they're considering, what they want their job to be, where they want to be hired, the kinds of experiences they want to have on campus, the place they want to be in. We're not in a big city, and there's pros and cons to that. I think a lot of them are pros, but if you want to be in Manhattan, Lehigh's never going to be in Manhattan. We cannot satisfy that for our students. So the yield is something that we seek every year to increase. Merit scholarships, again, just personal attention, that humanistic piece, really having deep conversations, talking about the return on investment, talking about how a Lehigh education will set you up, talking about the kind of culture we have. We are not a cutthroat place. We are a collaborative place. We are a place where you can be interdisciplinary. You don't have to just commit to one area of study. You can be an engineer in the marching band. You can be a business major who's a tour guide. You can do multiple things, and not every college will allow a student to do that. So we talk about a variety of things that are unique to us and the kind of experiences they have. We encourage them to visit campus. We support students in visiting campus in the spring to really immerse themselves. Free t-shirts, we give out, but we try to encourage students to do their learning and to picture themselves as a Lehigh student. And yield is something that we are very, very, very mindful of in our office.
Right. And that's again, like you mentioned, the alumni volunteers for admissions can influence that. And hearing from an alum, even older alums who are still engaged with Lehigh 75 years later, like, wow, there's something special about this school. So we are just about out of time. Lori Kennedy is our senior director for CCPD. She did put a link there to the first destination report. So check that out and we'll send that link as well. We are just about over time, so I'm not going to get to the rest of the questions, but I really thank you, Sarah. I think we covered a ton in just a short hour or 45 minutes that we had. I think this was really valuable. And will we be able to send out the slides? Is that confidential information or?
I don't think so. I'm happy to send out the slides. And, again, I encourage you to engage with the admissions office. If you have questions, you can ask them. We have a lot of recorded sessions on our website if you want to know about how we read essays or how we consider recommendations. We have lots of recorded sessions. Follow us on social media for tips, and please spread the word. Talk about Lehigh. Be proud.
Yes, absolutely. And send-offs we're in the middle of send-offs right now. We're having a great turnout by alumni and students and parents. And so you're like the post office. You just keep going.
Lord willing, right? Like just as one class comes in, we got to start working with another. And frankly, if that doesn't happen, we're all in deep trouble. So
right. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And have a great weekend.